This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
The Vietnam War, it's over. Your job's just begun.
A new HBO original limited series.
Welcome to the world of spycraft. Strap in.
From executive producers Park Chan-wook and Robert Downey Jr.
What are you concealing?
Based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Viet Thanh Nguyen.
What if I told you that I was a communist spy?
How did you become this?
The Sympathizer, streaming April 14th on Max. Subscription required.
Welcome to The After Party, a TSF Network podcast, a mixtape of purposeful, encouraging, and fun content from across all our shows who are part of our podcast network. I'm Heather Cook, head of advertising and partnerships.
And I'm Mandy Hernandez, the project manager. It's time to party. Thanks for joining us today. Happy Monday. We are so glad you are tuning in. Today, we get to hear from the amazing, wonderful Raising Boys and Girls podcast, David Thomas and Sissy Goff. And they sit down with an incredible human being, Kate Bowler.
Yes, this episode is called The Truth About the Prosperity Gospel and Parenting with Kate Bowler. Kate is a professor at Duke University, 3-time New York Times bestseller, and this conversation is full of both laughter and tears. You're just not going to know which one you want to cry or laugh at the same time, as she shares with honesty and humility. So let's listen in.
Okay. So we want to start with hearing a little bit about you. We obviously know so much that's publicly out there about your story. That's never all of our story, obviously. But we feel like we hope every person listening is already familiar with all of your work. But if they're not, will you talk a little bit about your story, your family, growing up, and how you found your way to being such a force for good in this world?
Well, sure. I'm from the middle of Canada, and both my parents are professors. And for some reason, along the way, I became obsessed with the idea that academia and just like studying, especially church history and religious thought, was going to be the plan for my life. And every time you make an amazing singular plan, it always works out. And that's the end of that story. So, never mind. So I spent my 20s interviewing televangelists, which is just a wonderful way to really waste your youth. And I was trying to make sense of the idea that that what God really wants for all of us is fundamentally just to make us happy. And that God wants to make us happy and also bonus healthy and wealthy, and that this was a story about the prosperity gospel. And everyone thought the story was either like a ridiculous caricature, like, oh, I can't believe they think that, or had like a secret hope that was maybe entirely true. And so I wanted to write the first history of this idea in, I thought, an honest but compassionate way. But I never thought that I was in any way the kind of person. I grew up Mennonite, so we love suffering, just being a gentle bummer and making furniture is kind of our main thing. So don't take that away from us. And, but then, but life just kept unraveling. I just kept really hitting every road bump. I was really struggling to get pregnant. I had all these chronic pain, disability issues. I lost use of my arms for 2 years. That was the end of my 20s. And then I finally landed my dream job. I got this fancy Duke professor job when I was 29. And I was like, okay, this is it. Like, I've locked it in. My dream is finally achieved. And actually my dad, my sweet historian dad, because I grew up on the University of Manitoba campus, which has so many, it feels like, architectural tributes to the Stalinist era. It's just like, what else can be done with cinder block? We don't know. Let's discover that together. So when he saw my little like academic Shangri-La, my dad was like, oh, sweetie. I thought we were going to have like a really nice moment. He's like, if you ever leave a place like this, I'll kill you. And I was like, okay, I get where this is going. So yeah, I finally, I got pregnant, had this perfect little Zach, and had my dream job. And then it was right at that moment when I discovered that I had stage 4 cancer, and then I was probably not going to live throughout the year. And I was so furious. I was so hurt. It was like the big feeling of like betrayal by God, I suppose. Like, well, I finally stuck the landing and you do this. Wow. So that was kind of the beginning of me realizing that I had that there was something that was going to happen in the undoing, and that a lot of it was kind of related to my secret prosperity gospel feelings that maybe God was supposed to be conspiring to make my life happy. And then what am I supposed to believe? And that also just became the time when I stopped being just an academic, which I have loved being an academic. But I thought, well, I'm not honestly going to be able to do this by myself. And so that's what started the kind of desire to write publicly and also just have a podcast, mostly because I needed other people to think with as I was going to try to figure out what to do with the rest of my life.
Well, and out of that, you have written books that we love, recommend, give us gifts, shout from the rooftops about all the time.
Yes.
Books like Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved, No Cure for Being Human, and Other Truths I Need to Hear, Good Enough, and the Lives We Actually Live. And Kate, you say there's no cure for being human, but we are all good medicine. And you live that truth. You absolutely live that truth. And will you just talk more about even what that can look like?
Well, I guess I kind of hoped it would look like, maybe what do we even do in our 30s and 40s? You just think you're going to get somewhere where you've solved the problem, like solve the problem maybe of your own personality, solve the problem of like all of your dreams, family togetherness, health, success, all that stuff. And I guess what I kind of learned as cancer went from a crisis to a chronic condition, and then to just like, what does it mean to survive? I was like, oh, I guess we kind of are all doing that, right? Is we're moving into a place where we figure out like, well, what truths do I need that like bear up my life? If I'm never actually going to solve my humanity. So I really started thinking about our prosperity gospels and the way that especially like the story of health and wealth has become like a wellness philosophy that tells all of us that we're just sort of one time management strategy away. One clearing your inbox, one cousin who recently discovered essential oils, from like trying to take every part of our life and fix it. So that's definitely my personality is like, I just want to fix everything. Everything's a problem to be solved. So I guess I've been just spending a lot of time like theologically just trying to think about trying to live inside of this culture of exhausting perfectionism and maybe how to like live with a greater sense that, like our humanity is, we're people to be loved, not problems to be solved.
Okay. I'd like to talk about everything you're saying for 30 more hours. So, okay. You mentioned the cancer, and you were 35 when you were given that diagnosis.
Yeah, that's right.
I can't even imagine. And to have already spent these years researching good and hard with different folks, I'm sure some of whom you attached to their work and some of whom you probably didn't as much.
I'll name them all right now. Go ahead. I made a list.
So it's fascinating to have been in that work and then receive this diagnosis. And like you said, as much as we can probably say we don't adhere to the prosperity gospel, at some point, there are parts of that we have attached to over the years. How has that impacted your perspective on good and on hard in our lives, on suffering in our lives?
I think it was very humbling, honestly, for me to realize how personally invested I was in the prosperity gospel. I mean, I really thought I was like, I didn't grow up Pentecostal or that particular flavor of evangelical, I would have thought, well, I don't deserve my life. And so I think that bit has been very humbling. Now, when I see it everywhere, which is to say 90% of what is available at our local Target, I see so much of myself in it, and it helps me. It helps give me, I hope, like a sense of sort of theological perspective of what we're up against. I think we're all up against this feeling that fundamentally who we are is wrong and in need of a solution that will be available in 7 affordable monthly installments. Let me just give me your credit card number. And that it accidentally has transformed our culture into one of almost perennial televangelism. I mean, really, social media has replaced most of what we used to just watch on late night TV in the 80s and 90s. And now everywhere you look, we have this really shiny, shellacked version of what it means to be a person of faith. I think a lot of us feel like failures most of the time now because of this like aggressive culture that we're in. So like, what is good? What's good when you feel like a loser?
Yes.
What is good when your health and your family doesn't look like you wish? What's good if you don't have really anything to say during the testimony section of or you dread passing of the horrible piece? Good God, I hate passing of the piece, partly because my hands are super sweaty. And I'm just like slowly wiping it down everyone's cotton. But yeah, I think it's very difficult right now for us to even know what it means to be honest with each other because we're so affected by the culture that we live in.
Yeah, I've never even thought about it till you said that, but we have talked so much in, 30 years of counseling kids and families. We have never seen parents feel as much like failures as we're hearing in our offices these days. And the juxtaposition of social media and this presentation of you should be able to be this perfect parent. And these are all the things that we're seeing. And the awareness and the drive in some ways towards more vulnerability and honesty, the two things coming together, I would think here we are opening up about our failures, but then the opposite in front of us is in front of us all the time. So I would think that's even driving some of the feeling of I'm just not there when we sure all three want you to hear us saying, if you're listening, no one's there. That is not what this is. And even in our work, I'm feeling convicted as you're talking, honestly, thinking about writing a book called The Worry-Free Parent, Raising Emotionally Strong Boys. We just want y'all to hear us say, it is not really possible this side of heaven, but it's what we're moving towards. And it's what we can experience under this banner of who God is, but only because of him, not because of anything inside of us or the work that we're doing, because that's not the end of this work until we get to heaven.
I bet you guys see so much therapeutic prosperity gospel because I know that I see a lot of people leaning toward a story of like, well, if I just get to perfect emotional self-management
and
then
have
that's
the 5
what
tools.
Happiness.
Right.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, well, actually, I mean, our story has like great joy and great sorrow. And if it doesn't, we practice being sad about Jesus dying every year. So feel free to just join us during the bummer season. If that lower range of emotion is not attractive to you, we'll bring it up.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's so good.
Oh, Kate, in this season of the podcast, we are talking about stages of development and who kids are in different seasons and what they need. And we would just love to begin there by asking you, what was your favorite stage growing up and why?
Oh, that's so fun. I guess, no. I'm going to give you my horrible answer. I'm going to give you my horrible answer. This is because this checks out now. But it was, I went through this horrible, wonderful 2.5-year period where I read every book about the Holocaust. And it turns out that I know a lot of girls who go through the Holocaust stage. But it's the first time when I could go to a library and I could read about the problems in the world and that it was like this big worldview opener that it wasn't because I had been through a very horse phase where I was just hoping that there was a horse named Artemis out there who was going to really understand my personality. But then I was like, wait a minute, there are serious sad books out there. Cut to 2.5 years later of like a montage of me crying. But I think what it did was it made me absolutely obsessed with the idea that there's that there are questions about the human condition that there's not an answer to, that we will always struggle with. What is great evil, personally and systemically? What is the value of community? Can we really save each other? Like that was the first time I was like, oh my gosh, they let me have this for a library card. So yeah, that was Kate Bowler, ages 12 and 13. And she was very weepy.
But I love that you're saying that. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of girls over the years that I have talked to through the horse phase of their life. So common. And I wouldn't say the Holocaust phase is as common across development.
How dare you not say that is an official stage?
But let me say that has to do with the next question we want to ask, because I think there are parts of your Holocaust phase, Kate, that very much are reflective of who you have become. And that you have become a person who is not afraid to walk with people towards suffering and to talk about it. And that really is, this is we're working on interviews for this new season, and we were talking about questions, and one of them really was, we would like to know moments when you look back on your life that you would say, oh, there's me.
Oh,
there I am starting to emerge. And I didn't even realize that that's what was happening. And so obviously you said one or two, the combination of the two is probably where it is. But what would you add to that?
So interesting. Yeah, it's really funny also just because, especially with the pandemic, a lot of women have been experimenting with hair that gets longer and longer and longer. And I saw a friend the other day and she was like, yeah, I really feel like I'm riding the line between hot girl and horse girl with this braid. I was like, please write that down immediately. Okay, so my horse girl phase is never over. I think one of my, especially when because I see it in my son, this, and I was like, which superpower would do you wish you could have? And he's like, oh, I just wish I knew what everyone was thinking. And I remember feeling that too, is if I could just figure that out, I could, navigate this obstacle course, which is adolescence. But it's always been the great hope with empathy is that I could be always soft enough, but astute enough to be able to read what other people, like especially people's struggles. So I love that when I see, the horrible burden of empathy descend on children. When I'm like, oh, this is going to be a lifetime, a lifetime of learning to read and a willingness to be read.
You mentioned your amazing son and thinking about the stages of development with him. What's been your favorite with him so far and why?
He's in the pirate years right now where it's just like a gentle, it's like half order. Treasures. The world is full of treasures. And, but he's still, cause he's 9, just turning 10. He still has a face that's only one layer, which is so beautiful. And we make up stories all the time. And lately we've been making up stories about, because we were talking about attachment actually. And he's like, we're talking about why he loves his stuffies so much and why I always love stuffed animals. And he's like, Mom, do you think someone could fall in love with something if they just saw like a smiley face painted on the road? And I was like, oh, I bet. So now that's our new superhero is someone who the second they see a smiley face, they're so in love. And I just love that. But he's, they're trying to figure out who is theirs, who cares about them. The world is getting a little bit bigger, but not so big, but still a lot of stuffies. Yeah, right now is my favorite stage, really. He's so into, he didn't want to go to school today. And I was like, oh, sweetie, like, okay, well, what kind of job do you want to get if you don't want to go to school? He's like, I'll be an archaeologist. I'm like, sorry, buddy, you need more than 3rd grade for that. You better get in there.
What would you say has been the hardest stage so far and why?
To be honest, all of his stages, I've mostly just mapped onto my experience of trying to of figuring out how to be his mom when I was sick. So when he was very little, and I have like such an obsessive, intense desire not to miss anything that I've been in every stage. I've been so grateful to clear the hurdle of like, oh my gosh, she's getting older. I'm getting older. We're getting older. And the panic of that is going away, but the intensity about it really hasn't. So when he was little, I was just obsessed with him getting memories so that he could remember me. And then, it's been a kind of, his development has mostly also been me trying to figure out what does it mean to be a mom that's not fully well for a lot of the young stuff. It was especially hard when I was like, I had to wear a chemotherapy pack and like I couldn't be as like rough with him. So I did a lot of like sock puppets, a lot of puppetry during those years. I think that's why now that it's just getting more and more casual, I can't believe we're having new problems. It's just, I have to say the whole thing feels obsessively about just being so surprised that I can watch his independence from me, who thought I was the center that must hold, which I believe is a common myth of every parent.
Yes. Oh, I can't even imagine the memories that y'all are making. I mean, I can't even imagine just who you are and knowing that little guy getting to have those conversations with you about archaeology and superheroes and smiling faces.
Hey, when you reflect on that particularly hard season, is there anything that you wish someone had said to you? Or maybe something that someone did say to you that really stayed with you as you think back on that season?
Well, I learned something that I didn't really want to learn when I had to open my house up to everybody because I had such a round robin of people visiting and so much sort of health chaos, is having everybody there all the time really did change my parenting because I couldn't be I wasn't going to be the intermediary between him and everybody else. I was going to have to allow a lot of people to parent him. And that was very uncomfortable for me at first because I'm obsessed with him and he smelled like cookies. And I was like, get away from my marshmallow, but watching how quickly he developed a like really, really healthy trust for other people and loves their routines and their little habits. I mean, like still my parents talk with him on Skype almost every night and just listening to them have their own adorable little habits. I wouldn't have picked any of it, but the idea that I'm not an island has become central to how I hope I will continue to raise him. It's like, all right, your kid is a group project, whether you like it or not. So may as well kind of settle into which people you can really trust to supplement the parts that you can't or won't always provide.
What wise words.
Oh my goodness.
That couldn't be more true.
That. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, so we would love to know some of your favorite parenting advice you've ever heard along the way. I feel like you have given people lots of their favorite parenting advice just in this conversation, but what would you say is something that has taken root inside of you that someone said to you?
I guess I love it. I learned from my old Mennonite church growing up had some wonderful group parenting. And so I developed a couple little habits I took from watching this sweet little church of Mennonite misfits. But one, Mr. Litz was abundantly formal with all of his daughters in a way that bestowed great dignity on them at all times. And it made me laugh. But being overly formal with children, it's like, I do it all the time and I love seeing it in other people, but treating their little lives like there's great ceremony is needed. Hello, Miss Rachel. Thank you so much for bestowing your presence upon us. Because like every little kid, if they feel like they're somehow on your level, they're just like the stories, so I find I do it at the pool. I do it like, oh, hello, Mr. Trevor. I like treating them like they're tiny royalty. It makes me laugh and it makes them laugh. But yeah, great formality, I think, because their brains are wonderful. And then I'll find little treasures. My friend, Catherine, is the person I co-parent with the most. And I've learned so much from her about graduated independence. she's constantly making like a scavenger hunt and then sending her kids off to help them learn independence. I do not want my child to learn. And I have to say, watching other people not activate their giant fear response has been really important for me, because I have like hyper anticipatory, let me just put every Band-Aid on in advance kind of attitude. So letting her kids not need her has been such an inspiration. So yeah, mine is being obsessed with the idea that underneath in their skulls is a great, incredible story. And so I'm very good at getting to know like a kid's very strange habits. And she's wonderful at like setting them off on an adventure that I don't plan on them having. And somewhere in there, I think is probably my greatest, the greatest description of whatever it is I'm doing.
Okay, we like to move from parenting to food. We somehow find our way there in every episode. And a few questions we'd love to ask you that are food related. First would be, what family meal would you say defined your growing up, or what meal will likely define your son's growing up?
Well, I would say that the three of us didn't exactly grow up during the great culinary renaissance we are now experiencing. So the meal of my childhood was a thing my dad invented, quote unquote, called hamburger soup goop, which was like a whole can of vegetable soup and then ground beef. And I think ketchup on top. And that was Tuesday through Thursday. And it was the era. It was the canned era. But that is the unbelievably, hilariously low rent approach that I breakfast for dinner. Great. That's the everyone's going to be okay attitude toward food. So yeah, hamburger soup goop changed my life. And I think most of the food that we do now that he'll remember is we go camping a lot. So there's just a world of pancakes. It's also wonderful. The 2-ingredient box mix.
There you go.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we talk a lot about tacos on this podcast as well, and we love to know what's your favorite.
My favorite taco?
Your favorite taco. You can dream as big as you want.
I like how you're saying this to someone who grew up in Manitoba. I know. Like a taco was like, do you remember those box kids? That's all we had. We were square on the bottom. Was the quote unquote invention in order to make them stable.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I am the world's most basic person. I just want someone else to make it. And if anyone puts anything adventurous on there, I'm just like, take me there. Take me there. I don't deserve it, but I want to go.
That's so good. Well, we're going to be kind of near you. How far is Charlotte from you?
About 2.5 hours.
Oh, that's not near you. I was going to say you could give us a taco recommendation, but that's too far.
I only know the meatballs at the local IKEA, should you choose to meander over that way.
That sounds wonderful.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope to see you the rest of this week. Don't forget to check out more for Amazing Boys and Girls by searching for the name in your favorite podcast listening app and hitting that follow button for more episodes.
Make sure to click follow on the After Party feed, and we will be back here tomorrow. See you then.